I'm interested in insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance. And insulin is what makes the glucose, the sugar that makes energy, work. And so when you eat something, your body converts that into sugar, and then the sugar has to get into the cells to make energy, whether they're muscle cells or fat cells. The research I do, usually I look at blood, I'll look at insulin levels and glucose levels, which is the sugar, and I look at what are the factors that influence the change in the insulin sensitivity. So I measure insulin sensitivity, and then what I'm trying to do now is just determine what are the psychological variables that seem to drive insulin resistance, what are some of the health behaviors that seem to have more impact in our samples. And we currently have 2,500 people enrolled in a study here in Brownsville that I collaborate with the School of Public Health on. And we have people that go door to door if the person agrees to participate, and then they enumerate everyone in the household, and then we randomly select one person from that household, and from that household that person's invited to come in. Once we've randomly selected that person, we invite the entire household. From there, what we do is we have smaller studies. So we're taking people who were at risk of diabetes. We have 300 of them now currently enrolled, and we follow them every 4 months. And when they come in, they complete a short questionnaire, and we get their blood pressure, their height, their weight, their waist circumference, their body fat. We give them the results of their tests. Then they come back once a year for a more thorough exam. I'm responsible to collect good data, and then the statisticians help us weight the data, make sure that the random selection is done properly, and that we can then have numbers that we can actually say that in Brownsville, Texas, we have 27.8% people who have diabetes based on their glycosylated hemoglobin, which is a way to diagnose diabetes. We have 80% of the people are either overweight or obese. Type 2 is multifactorial. We know genetics has not changed over the last 100 years, so the genetic propensity to have diabetes probably hasn't changed that much. But we do know what has changed. We're more sedentary. The food that we're exposed to is different. Everybody, if you look across the nation, our nation is getting heavier and heavier. In type 2 diabetes, the person is able to make insulin. The insulin just for some reason doesn't work the same way. So for one, if they're overweight, they need more insulin just to get into the more cells and the bigger cells. But then it seems that the insulin doesn't really work properly. There may actually be mechanisms within the cell that are not allowing the insulin to let the glucose get in, and then once it gets in, not allowing the receptor that lets the insulin in go back to the cell and get some more. If you lose weight, then you have fewer cells, you have more of the insulin to go around. So if you have type 2 diabetes where you need a little more insulin to get your glucose metabolized, well, if you've got less weight on board, then that insulin's going to be more effective and it's going to be more efficient. And we also know that if you exercise, 2 little glucose molecules or sugar molecules go into the cell instead of just one when you're exercising and when you have more muscle tissue. So if you can build more muscle tissue and decrease the weight, then the insulin that you have may be able to work a little bit better. We know that, lifestyle is such a big part of many of the chronic diseases that are prevalent now. We know that overweight and obesity drive cancer. We can begin to prevent obesity, and then we will have some answers for the whole nation, not just here. I think we have a special need because we have a population that has a genetic risk for diabetes. We know that. They're twice as likely to have diabetes than anywhere else. So if we know that obesity drives diabetes and we get more diabetes, then we have even more need to prevent such a problem.